Interesting question here about differences in competition performance versus training performance. This question says, I just competed in my first powerlifting meet. I went 8 for 9, but I did not hit all the numbers I wanted to hit. I adjusted most of my attempts down based on how I felt after the previous attempt. And most of the time, it turned out to be the right choice. Maybe it's a combination of nerves plus being in a new environment. On my squat, I hit about 95% of my estimated 1 rep max. On the bench, I only hit about 93% of my estimated 1 rep max, but my deadlift was bang on. It got me thinking about, ideally, what should I be expecting to hit on meet day based on my training estimated 1 rep maxes on the program going into the meet. Based on the athletes you coach and your own experience competing, should we expect to hit our estimated 1 rep maxes or even exceed them in meets, especially when you have several meets under your belt, or is it common for meet results to be somewhat lower than your estimated 1 rep maxes going in? Okay, so there's a few things going on here, and it looks like you've got a pretty healthy mindset as far as how you're dealing with this. With it being your first meet, it's not at all uncommon to have an experience like this where you need to your results in competition. They don't quite reflect your overall potential from training, at least not to the degree that you'd like them to. That's super common. Part of it's the change in environment, and I think that's a big one. It's just getting used to the new flow of things. Competing is a skill, just like performing a squat is a skill. So as you get into the flow of competing, you'll get more and more comfortable. You'll get better at that. I don't really have a percentage of estimated 1 rep max that I recommend or that I use as a rule of thumb. We generally just do exactly what you did. Use the estimated 1 rep max to gauge where your strength is at, and then adjust your attempts on the fly. Now, having only 93% of your estimated 1 rep max on the bench, that's a little worrisome, just because openers are generally around 90%. So you don't want your opener and your final strength potential to be that close together. So in the future, you may need to adjust your goal weight down a little bit on the bench until you've established a different pattern, basically. But other than that, a lot of it is just that. It's finding out what pattern do you have? Because I find that this is very personality dependent. We have some lifters that just really seem to thrive on the competitive environment, and they go to a meet and they hit lifts that they couldn't even touch in training. But then we have other lifters who have very different experiences. They go to the meet and they perform at some level below what those estimated 1 rep maxes indicate. Now, why that is, like I said, I think personality has a lot to do with it. I think environment and comfort and just your ability to deal with all those different stimuli. I think that's the biggest piece of it. I think that's the largest determinant on where you fall on the spectrum. The important thing for you is to establish, where do you fall on this spectrum. Now, you made it through your first meet and you've got this data point. So I recommend that you go with this data point, until you've established a different pattern. So next time, if you adjust your estimated 1 rep max on the squat and the bench down a little bit, more the bench than the squat, adjust them down a little bit. If you hit your goal weight and have more in reserve, great. You're establishing a different pattern. You're establishing that this was just more first meet jitters or something like that, and you've got that out of your system, and you're going to be on a different track from there on. I did something on my bench a while back where, for whatever reason, and there are plenty of reasons actually, my bench in a meet was about 50 pounds less than what I was doing in competition. Or my bench in competition was 50 pounds less than what I was doing in training. Now, that had to do with my technical discipline in training, the equipment I was using in training. Those were the big two. Also, my ability to taper and perform well in competitions. So all those things together made about a 50-pound impact for me. So what I would do is, when I would go into a meet, I would adjust down my goal weight by about, between 25 and 50 pounds. And, that's what I went with. Now, over time, I fixed the equipment issues. I fixed most of the technical discipline issues, still working on a few of them. And I've fixed a lot of the tapering problems. So I've seen that 50-pound gap shrink to a much smaller number now. And so over time, I've adjusted my goal weights accordingly. I would definitely recommend that you follow a similar pattern with all of this.